All right, so we're ready to now take a look at completing the square. I am fairly confident that most of you have learned how to complete the square in the past, so this is going to be a quick review, hopefully. So first of all, let's start off with something like this expression that we have, and we just want to complete the square, which means what number do we add to this expression to make it a perfect square trinomial? So the way that you're going to do that is you take the coefficient of the linear term, which is 8, and you divide it by 2 and square it. So 8 divided by 2 is 4, 4 squared is 16, so we add the 16. So that is the process of completing the square. And what that creates is a binomial. Well, it's a perfect square trinomial that you can factor into a binomial squared. So in this case, the binomial that would be squared would be x plus 4. So that's our goal, is that we need to create a perfect square trinomial to be able to factor into this binomial quantity squared in order to solve an equation that's quadratic. Okay, so let's take a really simple example here, which I know when you look at it, you say you can solve this by factoring very easily, and that's all well and good, but I want us to do the steps of completing the square so that we can see exactly what's going on with small, easy numbers. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to move the 5 to the other side. And I'm leaving a space for myself right here because I know I'm going to be adding something in order to make this a perfect square trinomial. So what do I add? So you take this -6, that's the coefficient of the linear term, and you divide it by 2 and square it. So 3 squared is 9. So I'm going to add 9 over here. Now because this is an equation, we need to keep it balanced. So if I add 9 to the left side, I have to add 9 to the right side. Okay? Now this right here becomes our perfect square trinomial, which can now factor into x minus 3 quantity squared. So where did that minus 3 come from? From right here, -6 divided by 2. You just have to remember to do that. So you've already done that calculation. You don't actually factor to figure it out. Over here, 9 minus 5 is 4. Once I've gotten to this stage, to get the x by itself, I'm going to undo this square, which means I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So x minus 3 is going to equal plus or minus 2. Don't forget the plus or minus. And then the next step is to add the 3 to the other side. And then I actually can figure out the two answers that are 5 and 1. Okay, like I said, you could do that faster just by factoring, but I wanted to go through the steps with you so you can see what's going to be expected. Because guess what? You're going to have harder things to do. So 6x squared plus 5x is equal to 6. This is what we're going to complete the square on. So whenever you complete the square, what you need to be aware of is that the coefficient of the quadratic term, or a, needs to be 1. So when it's not 1, you have to take care of that first. So we're going to divide through by 6. So this becomes x squared plus 5/6 x, leaving a space to add something in, is equal to 1, because 6 divided by 6. Okay, so same process as before, but now we have a fraction. So 5/6, you're going to take that coefficient of the linear term, take half of it, which is the same as multiplying by half, right, instead of dividing by 2, and square it. So that gives us 25 over 144 that we are adding to both sides of our equation. Okay, now remember, you don't actually have to factor this because we know what it should be. We built it in a very specific way so that we would get whatever you got here before you squared it. So half of 5 over 6 is 5 over 12, and that's what goes right there. Easy, right? This you do have to add together, so we want the common denominator added to 25, so we get 169 over 44. Now we square root both sides, and then we move the 5/12 over to the other side, and now we can add and subtract these to get our two answers of -3/2 and 2/3. Okay, so that's it. That's completing the square. Hopefully that was more of a review than something new for you guys.